Hey everybody, welcome to our Psychic Development Challenge. Let's do our opening prayer and then off we go. Today's topic is how to get a really clear reading. So I'm going to go into the major blocks, the things that people focus on where they get confused, right? Between somebody's energy versus their mind versus what they think, the way people pleasing and kind of like dishonesty blocks your readings. The way that you can see someone's fears inside their aura, inside their mind versus seeing like the highest truth or what's actually going to happen. So let's do our opening prayer and then off we go. Oh, great Spirit, Father, Sky, Mother, Earth, the winds, the waters, my Father, my Mother, Atanaha, all that is. We thank you for our lives and we thank you for these good people. We thank you for all that we are and all that we are to become. We dedicate our time spent together and our relationships with one another to you. We ask that our suffering be ended and our pain be lifted to the love and to the peace that lay beyond. Aho, Amen, Namaste. Okay, so when it comes to receiving psychic information and doing psychic readings, the first thing you want to do is make sure your own energy is clear. Why? If you haven't cleared your energy, then what happens is it's kind of like looking at the world with dirty glasses. You can't really see the other person clearly. You see it through the filter of your own energy. So if you're having a good day, it's like they're having a good day. If you're having a bad day, it's like they're having a bad day. Unless your energy is clear or at 0 point or at neutral, you tend to project your own experience of life onto the reading. And it's very difficult for you to tell the difference between your emotions if you're really deep in your feelings instead of the other person's emotions. So the clearer your field is, the clearer your aura is, your chakras are, basically the cleaner your tools are, the more accurate your reading of the other person's going to be. So I like to start off every single day and every single reading by doing a quick energy clearing. So right before any reading, I'll imagine like this waterfall of white light rushing through my energy field and removing everything. Other people's energies, opinions, beliefs, any stressful things that have happened, anything. Like I literally, it doesn't take 2 seconds now because I just close my eyes and imagine that water rushing over me. And then the next thing that I will imagine doing is I will literally imagine turning up my psychic senses. So imagine like a little dial and I'll turn up my clairaudience, clairsentience, clairaudience. I literally imagine like it's like a giant machine and I'm switching the power on. No different than if I was turning a car on. I'm like switching on my powers and I'm switching them on to full. So it's not like they're on in the background. It's like they're on full. And that's really important because you don't want to be on all the time. That's what leads to burnout and overwhelm, but also to like inappropriate situations where people are then asking you for psychic readings, etc. When you're just being a human, when you're just having a life, it makes you become like a spiritual teacher all the time instead of when it's appropriate or in the right context. And then what you want to do is you want to focus in on that person. Now, in spiritual and psychic circles, we call this tuning in, right? So you want to go into God's light or place yourself in a bubble of white light, and then you want to ask for the person to be brought in front of you energetically. It's really important that you go into God's light because you don't want to be, for starters, in 3D plane reality or the astral planes, because that slows down the pace of the reading and of the healing. And it's subject to different laws of the universe. You want to be in that divine light because that's the place where it's easiest to get miracles. It's the place where it's easiest to get accurate readings. It's a place where it's easiest for transformation to happen, but it's also a place at such a high frequency that it's very difficult for any lower energies or dense energies to come up with you. Okay, so it makes the reading a lot safer and a lot clearer and gets rid of a lot of dead weight and blech just by you taking them up there. And it also makes the reading an instant healing because anything that has the presence or the spirit of God in it and on it becomes an instant healing. Safety also makes the reading a lot easier because the client has walls, right? Real energetic walls. And if they don't feel safe, those walls are up. And it's not that you can't get through those walls. You can. You have to energetically go through them. It's no different than like flying your light body through a wall, but it's harder. It's harder to see accurately. You have to recognize there's a wall there. You have to literally go through it. And you're dealing with resistance. Whereas when you put them in the safety of God's light, their walls naturally normally dissolve and start to come down. It's easier for you to see clearly. And it's also easier for God to undo any mistakes that might occur through the reading or because of the reading, because you're at such a high vibration, such a high frequency. It's also easier for God to speak to you at that high vibration or that high frequency. So make sure that you're not getting lazy or you're not getting tempted to just stay in 3D. Make sure you go all the way up into God's light. Make sure you take that client with you. Make sure you ask for them to be brought in front of you and that you tune in. And then you want to ask for a reading, right, on the truth of that person from God and from their angels. Now, the reason you want to ask about a reading from the truth or through the law of truth is because the temptation is going to be to read their energy, to read their aura, to read their mind, to read into what they're telling you instead of to give the messages that God and the angels are giving you. And that's why it's also really, whilst it's really important for the person to ask questions because it helps you have like that access to their free will, right? It's more important that you ask God for the truth and then that you deliver that. Sometimes I will actually tune in to the next person I'm about to do a reading for before I read their question, because I want to know what God wants to say to them before I get stuck into the human mind, the human question, the human consciousness. I'm like, okay, what's God's answer to whatever this soul is crying out for? Because it's often very different to what the soul thinks the problem is, right? Or to what the person thinks the problem is. And it's very easy when you're empathic, like we are as healers, to get sucked into what the client wants to hear, to what the person thinks is the problem, to what they want you to read instead of focusing on what God and their angels want to say to them. And one of the biggest blocks to good psychic readings is being afraid of delivering honest messages. And also, this is where we get into like dishonesty and people pleasing. You have to give the messages that you get in the gentlest and kindest way possible. Being honest is not an excuse for cruelty. It's not an excuse for bluntness. That happens when you misunderstand the power of the law of truth, which is all powerful. The truth is so powerful that it doesn't require force. It literally will cut through the energy of like dishonesty or fear or illusion like a knife. You don't have to you don't have to add anything onto the truth. It's powerful enough as it is. If anything, you have to soften it a bit. I often imagine the truth as like white feathers floating on the tip of the water. That's how softly I want the truth to land. I want the truth is like the white feathers, and I want it to land really softly on the surface of the client's energy and of their consciousness so they can receive it without shock and trauma, without fear. The truth often requires massive and immediate divine action. And that is where most people freeze. That's where they get stuck in functional freeze. And that's where the temptation is to go into people pleasing. That's where the temptation is to tell the person in the abusive relationship that they can stay there forever when that's not what God or the angels are saying. That's where the temptation is to tell them that the job is coming when really you know that they don't want a job, that they want to be a spiritual teacher and a healer, and that the universe is saying no more. We're not giving, we're basically not subjecting another boss to you doing a job that you hate and you hating them, when the truth is deep down you're not being honest about what your desire is, right? And then it means you're basically not being a good employee and you're not being a good teacher or healer. It's really difficult to tell people the truth. But when they ask for a reading from God and the angels, that's what you're going to get. It's the same thing with health. It's the same thing with money. It's the same thing with business. You're going to get these really deep, what I call truth bombs. And you're going to have to make sure they're delivered with kindness and with love. And they at least 50% of the time are not what the client wants to hear. So you have to very much gently deliver them and say, look, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm picking up. You always tell them to take it or leave it, right? You're not here to force anybody to get it, but your job is not to change the reading. Your job is to give the most accurate reading possible. And what this does is it strengthens your channel, right? It really strengthens your channel because then God and the angels are getting the message that you are going to be a true channel. So they're trusting you with more and more information and more accurate stuff about your clients, but your clients are trusting you. They may not always like what you're saying, but because it's accurate and they know that it's true, they trust you and they trust God on a deeper level. Every single time you people please, every single time you tell them what they want to hear, it placates their ego and their mind, but it makes them lose trust in you as a reader or as a healer, right? So it's a double-edged sword. So the next thing that is the biggest block for most people is they're scared of getting it wrong, right? And they confuse getting the reading right with the person being happy with it. Getting the reading right means you're giving the information that you got in a loving and kind way and not trying to control your client's feelings, responses. It's really allowing them to receive it and helping hold space for them to receive it. Um, and that's a gift. That's a really, really huge gift. And it's one of the most powerful healings that there is. Okay, I'm going to have a look at some of the questions now. Okay, so Matt is saying, hi, Sky. Can you please give me guidance on how to recognize my intuition versus intrusive thoughts? I suffer from OCD. I'm hesitant to help people. Can you please do a scan? Thank you. So, your readings and your intuition come from a place of inner peace. You'll find that the voice is normally a still, quiet voice, and that your intuition is like a persistent feeling that brings you more peace. When you have like intrusive thoughts or OCD, those thoughts are going to have a high level of anxiety attached to them, a high level of control attached to them. It's a high level of force in the sense of if you don't flick the light switch 100 times, then you will feel bad. If you don't do this, the world will come to an end. There's a high level of emotional violence inside OCD. It's like your anxiety is trying to force you to do things so that you can achieve a feeling of safety, whereas your intuition taps into the unconditional safety you already have inside and it moves you closer to it through divine action and alignment, right? The longer you stay at higher vibrations doing readings for people, the faster mental health issues heal, the faster physical health issues heal, because the higher the vibration that you stay, the less intrusive thoughts can come in, the less emotional pain can come in, the deeper a state of peace you learn to hold, right? So intrusive thoughts from a spiritual perspective are thoughts that wounded parts of you or not are negative energies are feeding into your mind to keep you in a state of emotional or spiritual pain. When you shift to a higher vibration, whether it's through meditation, whether it's through readings, whether it's through healings, those thoughts should slow down or reduce, sometimes stop entirely, and they will be replaced by thoughts that are different, right? They'll still require a certain level of courage, but they are different. In my experience, people that particularly people that experience intrusive thoughts should, I kid you not, should cut out sugar and acidic food altogether. Um, they don't trust me. It just the inflammation caused by it makes everything worse, particularly mental health issues. Mental health problems, literally, when you scan someone's brain, whether it's a medical intuitive scan or a physical MRI scan, when you scan someone's brain, whenever you have anxiety, depression, your brain is actually inflamed, right? It's inflammation. So you want to reduce inflammation dramatically. And the fastest way to do that is to remove as much sugar, glucose, carbohydrate as possible from your diet. It's going to dramatically reduce the inflammation in your body. And it's going to make it a lot easier for you to hold a higher mental state and be able to start to move out of the frequencies that you're in. But intuition is very, very different than intrusive thoughts. Your intuition is normally slow. It's normally warm, and it's normally not intrusive at all. It's like a nudge. It's like the difference between someone having their hand on your back and guiding you versus someone grabbing you by the shoulders and forcing you. It's a very different energy. Um, it's a very, very different energy. And the more you practice, the more you'll feel the difference. Right? So practice is a very important part of discernment. Discernment only evolves through spiritual practice. Okay, Mattis? Okay, Ghana saying, hi, Sky. Is there a message from my angels in terms of the path to developing psychic abilities? Thank you. So the angels are actually showing me that you don't believe they're real. Like you know they're real, but deep down you're like, is this kind of like mumbo jumbo or is this for real? And they're saying that's stopping you from really committing. So the fastest way to develop your psychic gifts is to, for starters, clear your energy, and then the next step is to practice, like really, really practice. It's part of the reason why I do angel readings on a regular basis. It's part of the reason why I do challenges. It's part of the reason why I do groups. It's part of the reasons why inside the groups and the masterminds that I run in the Telegram groups, there are readings, there are Q&As, because I'm constantly having to practice scanning energy, responding to energy, doing readings. That practice is key. It's no different than being an athlete. If you want to run fast and you want to be good at running, you have to train. It's the same thing. Being a spiritual athlete means that you have to practice. So it's not just clearing the energy and clearing your own energy. You have to then practice it by actually doing readings, doing scans, doing healings. And you can do that through social media. You can literally put, I'm doing up free readings, I'm doing free healings when you're practicing, or you can do it in like other healing groups, etc., that you're in inside swaps, but you must practice. And the more you practice, the more confident you become, and the easier it goes. But can we clear your fear that it's not real? Because it's the opposite. There's nothing more real than the spiritual gifts that God put in you. And there's nothing new about these. These are older than the Bible. There we go. And let's just clear any beliefs that you're going to be weird, that you're going to be rejected, that you're going to be persecuted. And let's show you that before your spiritual gifts awaken, you chop wood, carry water. After your spiritual gifts awaken, it's chop wood, carry water. It's it's dramatic in that your experience of life changes and your feeling of being closer to God and the angels changes. But it's not dramatic in the sense that, suddenly people come out with their pitchforks. We're not in the medieval times anymore. There we go. Okay, and some of your hearts are closing. You're like, I'll never be loved if I'm weird, or I'll lose my family, etc. And let's show you that you'll never be loved unless you have the courage to be authentic, unless you have the courage to be yourself. There is no true love if you're hiding or lying about huge bits of who you really are. And that all that's required is for you to bring out your spiritual gifts in a way that aligns with your community. It's using the appropriate language. If you're Christian, it becomes mastering the gifts of prophecy and healing. And if you're Muslim, it's similar. If you're spiritual, you use clairaudience, clairsentience. Work with language that integrates you into your community instead of separates you from your community. But there isn't a religious community in the world that doesn't recognize and honor spiritual gifts. Okay, you may have to change church, but you will not have to change faith to master your spiritual gifts. Okay, that's looking good. Mary says, Sky, many times I have the impression that I hear people's thoughts, especially when I'm on the phone with them. Sometimes I feel I see their impression. Is this real or my imagination? It's absolutely real. It's an aspect of claircognizance. And I definitely experience it all the time. And this is what I mean. This is actually one of the ways it's easy to get a reading confused, because if you're seeing someone's thoughts, people have hundreds of thoughts every minute. I kid you not. And a lot of them are completely out of their control. So seeing someone's thoughts is not an accurate representation of their personality. It's not an accurate representation of their own feelings. It's only an accurate representation of their subconscious mind. Right? People have a lot of thoughts, just like people have a lot of emotions, and around 90% of them are out of the person's control. So it's very easy to read a person's thoughts and confuse it with what's actually going to happen, or read a person's thoughts, especially their greatest fears or their greatest desires, and confuse it with like the highest truth. That's why we go into God's light. That's why we ask for the law of truth before we do readings. But it's absolutely real, Maria. Mona saying, hi, Sky. I'm always nervous from my thoughts. How do you tell the difference between thoughts and information that doesn't come from you? Thank you very much. I don't see it that way. So I think like where a lot of psychics get confused is they try and decide if something is real by whether it comes from them or not. That's not how I channel, because the way that I believe is Course in Miracles based, okay? And the Course in Miracles reality is that we are one with all that is. So I'm not trying to get information from outside of myself to prove to myself that it's real. To me, it's real if it's me completely at one with God. And if it is loving, because only love is real, right? So I'm not trying to get information from outside of myself. I'm not seeing God as outside of me. I'm not seeing my angels as outside of me. Sometimes I will experience like voices and guides and stuff physically standing next to me. I'll feel them put their hands on my shoulders or their hand on the other person. But to me, the belief is not that they are outside of me. The belief is that everything is one, and you learn. Like, how do you tell the difference? Is first of all, you have to tune in differently. There's many different ways to do this, but for example, if you're learning to speak to your guides, you want to like take out like literally a piece of paper, right, and then write down my guides, right, and you want to like take a piece of paper and like scroll the just like draw circles with your hand to activate the subconscious mind. And then as you're like drawing the circles, draw the first things that come up, the first names that come up into your experience. And then literally put your hands on top of what comes and tune into the vibration. Because that's the first thing is, you know, how you see all those TikToks where people are like, you know, lock in. They're like, lock in, lock in. Tuning in is like locking in. If you want to speak to your guides, if you want to speak to angels, if you want to speak to God, the first skill you have to learn is to lock in, because it's a spiritual kind of tuning in. You have to learn to recognize the vibration of the being that you are feeling. And this is not just relevant to non-physical beings. It's the reason I can feel if my best friend isn't having a good day. It's the reason I can feel if my sister isn't having a good day. It's the reason I can feel if my mom isn't having a good day. I know their vibrations. So when something goes up, it's like there's a light flare inside me that's like, oh, there's something going on. It's like the web of life shakes, and I can tell which part of the web is trembling that they're in, right? But first you have to learn to tune in. Tuning in is to recognize the frequency or vibration of another being with accuracy. It's a skill. Once you master tuning in, the information about that person starts to come a lot faster. But the first step is you must learn to tune in, and you must learn what you're speaking to. And it's the same thing. You would get if you want to speak to God, you would get your sheet of paper. You would write God, creator of all that is, like ruler of the universe, king of kings. You would start drawing your circles and everything that comes up, and then place your hands on it and say, look, I really invite the Spirit of God to come into me, to speak to me, to awaken me. And you would focus on what that feels like in your mind, your body, your soul. You would focus on like locking in. What does God feel like? What does he say? What do I sense in my body when I'm in that feeling? And then when you practice that, it starts to become as natural as breathing. And I know when I'm getting a nudge from God or creator versus when I'm getting a nudge from my angels versus when I'm getting a nudge from my guides, because they energetically are a completely different frequency / signature, right? Okay, Hasina saying, hi, Sky. Can you see my divine timing and what God wants me to see and do? Thank you. Gosh, I think you've actually already had one of your divine timings. The first was when you had your spiritual awakening, and then there's another one coming into, and the divine timing is like you stepping into your full power, and that's the one where there's a lot of persecution wounds that I can feel it in your solar plexus and I can feel it in your throat. I think it's actually causing thyroid issues and metabolism issues because you're so scared of stepping into your spiritual power. There's definitely some sort of a quickening happening around your gifts as well. But the next step for you is to step into your spiritual power, and it's the angels really want to clear your fear around that. Oh, and everyone is lighting up like Christmas trees. So can we release the shock and trauma of taking on the responsibility of your spiritual power? You can't avoid responsibility and increase in power. Power and responsibility. It's like Spider-Man. Great power. With great power comes great responsibility. There is no other way. There we go. And you are capable. You are trustworthy. And it's a decision that you make, that what God gives you, you will carry with integrity, with kindness. Okay. That's looking much better. Oh, Anna saying, any messages from the angels regards to the way I use and trust my intuition and psychic gifts at the moment? Thank you. So the angels are saying to me that you are limiting them because you're scared that you're scared that your readings are too positive. You're scared that the things that you're saying aren't gonna happen, so then you're not giving the information that you're getting. You're, like, making your readings more negative than the information that you're getting because 'cause you're scared that the level of positivity that they're giving you is sounding inauthentic. So we're back to give the messages as they are and trust that the power of life and death is in your tongue, never mind an angel's tongue or God's tongue. When you receive a message, give it as it is, and it has the power to change the future. And it's not your job to decide whether or not the person steps into the opportunity or receives the miracle. It's your job to place that miracle on the table and allow them to have free will as to whether they take it or not. Okay. So, for example, when God gives you a multi-million dollar idea, you have a choice about whether you believe in yourself, about whether you execute and take divine action, about whether you move the way God is telling you to move, or you can doubt and put it off and procrastinate. But the free will is yours. It doesn't change the value of the idea, right? Um, don't control your clients' responses or reactions. Don't dim the positivity of your readings because you're scared that it's going to make your readings look inaccurate. Readings are not, you're not like a psychic. You're not here to describe the future. You're an energy reader. You're here to give messages straight from God. There's a difference between prophecy in a reading and psychic readings where they're just like, tell me what's going to happen in the future. If you want just want to be able to tell me what's going to happen in the future, you really want to go into the fourth plane of existence, go into the Akashic records and look at their life plan, right? But if you want to go give messages from a place of prophecy, which is more the way I do it, you're going up into God's light and you're telling them what God is giving them. You're really channeling that divine wisdom through. There are different types of readings. So it's important to get clear. There we go. So can we clear that fear that you're doing the wrong kind of reading? And let's show you get to decide what kind of readings you do. And you also get to decide what kind of people you attract. I don't really attract spiritual babies anymore to give readings to. I don't attract people that don't know they create their own reality. There we go. And so it is. Okay. Lavinia saying, hi Sky. It's easy for me to do readings or messages to clients, but in front of them, even if online I lack confidence. Would love your insights on this, please. It's because you can feel their energy. So the closer you are to a person, the more their energy influences you, especially they're physically next to you. So what I want you to do is put yourself in a bubble of white light and them in a bubble of white light. I don't want you to put both of you in one bubble. I want you to put you in separate energetic bubbles because that bubble for them is going to hold their energy so that then you can receive what you're getting from Creator and from the angels and from their guides without having to feel their responses or their confidence or lack of confidence, their faith or their lack of faith. You just focus on what you're getting and giving that information. There we go. And they're also showing me there's a wound around rejection, like it's about getting approval. And it comes back to your gifts, like your psychic and spiritual gifts never being honored or trained as a child. There we go. Okay, that's looking good. I'm going to do one more, guys. Samantha Garrett is saying, hi, Sky. Do the angels know what is my strongest gift to practice? I do Reiki, but I feel like I don't get messages or directions from my clients. You get feelings and claircognizance, like you have knowings, is what they're showing me, but your strongest gift is the healing. Currently, you're channeling it through Reiki, but you've been a healer long before you ever did Reiki. You've been a healer like lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. Um, they want to the energy that's blocking you is disappointment. Like you're so disappointed with how your life has turned out. Um, there's almost like an energy of like trying to manage your expectations, like don't get too excited. And your angels are like saying, expect miracles. Like we get to work miracles through you. They are saying that if you would like to receive messages for your clients, you need to give them permission. Give them permission to open up your clairaudience, your clairsentience, your clairvoyance. Like give them permission. It's like you're afraid of your own psychic gifts. So anybody who's afraid of it and hasn't asked, I just want you to out loud ask. Say, angels, please open up my psychic and spiritual gifts so that I can receive messages from my clients and for myself. I would like to hear you, know you, see you. Creator, I would like to hear you, know you, see you. I give you permission to open up my psychic gifts and abilities in the highest and best way with ease and grace. And so it is. Okay. I love you all very much. I will see you here same time, same place tomorrow. We have Medical Intuitive coming up. So if you want to become a better healer, like perform healings for different metaphysical diseases, if you want to be able to scan the way that I scan, drop me a DM and we can talk about that, because that's the place to learn how to do this. We have angel reading course, which is still in full bloom. We're about to start on the healing angels this week. So if you want to join us for that and become a certified um, person in working with angels, drop us a DM around that. And we have Seven Figure Psychic, which is for those of you that are like, how the hell do I transition into my spiritual business? How do I make money from this and still honor my light and still honor God? That is, drop me a DM about that one. Okay. I will see you guys tomorrow and we'll do more work on our psychic development. I love you all so much. Let's do our closing prayer. Oh, great spirit, Father, sky, Mother Earth, the winds, the waters, my father, my mother, Atanaha, all it is. We thank you for our lives and we thank you for these good, good people. We thank you for all that we are and all that we are to become. We dedicate our time spent together and our relationships with one another to you. We ask that our suffering be ended and our pain be lifted, to the love and to the peace that lay beyond. Aho, amen, namaste.